Welcome to this brief introductory mini lecture on case study and case study analysis. I thought that this might be appropriate for those of you who are taking courses with me and with other faculty here at the supply chain group at Rutgers, mainly because quite a number of the classes that we offer do have case study analysis as part of the expectations. And so this mini lecture kind of does an overview as to why we do the case studies, how to go about analyzing them, what the write-ups generally entail, and what you can expect to gain from them as you go through the process. Case studies and analysis have been around for a while, but let me start with a video presentation from one of the birthplaces of the method, which goes back to Harvard Business School.
In the morning when you're going to class, there's a level of excitement, and I would say nervousness.
I have to go through my whole pre-teaching ritual. I have my pre-teaching trance.
In that 10 minutes, reviewing all the case facts in my head, I'm thinking about who the protagonist is, what are some important things that I may want to remember, because if you sit in that classroom and you're the first person to open, you better have something intelligent to say.
I usually arrive exactly 10 minutes before. There are probably a dozen small things that ritualistically I better go through to make sure I'm ready to go.
You have a few minutes basically to gather your thoughts and collect, but there's also this, you're around your peers and you're around your friends, and it's a very intellectually stimulating conversation.
People are arguing about the numbers that they get on a case.
And I think there's a level of enjoyment that you get from having a new problem to solve.
Most people are, I think, pretty calm on the outside, but they start to get nervous.
Heated moment a little bit right before when the professor walks in the room. They're probably doing something in their papers, like looking at their teaching plan, and they look up and you know it's coming.
They close the door and you know that all of a sudden it's a question going to someone, you don't know who. It's almost impossible to predict, and that person could be you.
So, Reva, you have a very high sales forecast, and Nick, you have a very low sales forecast. So I'm going to ask each of you to give us the logic behind the forecast you've got 4 years out. Most folks think of university as a professor professing, and it's not uncommon for a professor to lecture and do at least 80% of the talking. With the case method discussion, we reverse that formula.
So I think that's probably where the two differences are lying, is we put the student in the seat of that manager who's confronting a problem.
It really mirrors what managers do in real life.
You've got enduring business problems, you've got compelling individuals, and you've got powerful environments for change. And I think all those make exciting learning.
It's fun, right? I mean, there's a lot of the active engagement. It's hard in a lot of ways as well, though. Nothing is spoon-fed to you. You've got to come ready to play every day. I have been amazed teaching here 17 years at the consistent level of high preparation.
I think there's definitely peer pressure to prepare for your cases. We're all depending on each other to come prepared, to come with good comments, prepare to share our own experiences.
The more you prepare for a case, the more I think everybody else gets out of it.
It's not like math class where you can go through and you can derive a proof and say, okay, I did it, I got my proof, I'm done. Here it's like you read the case and you can't crack these things, there's not a right answer. So you read through and you decide, you make your decision, and then you have a conversation with someone in the hallway and you completely reverse your decision because they brought up a really great point.
If you want to know whether you're voting for A or whether you're voting for B, because you need to have a stand, because in the real world you need to have a stand too, and you need to have an opinion. And you can be open-minded, but you still need an opinion.
You read the case facts, but they stay with you. So you might be doing other stuff, you might be playing intramurals, you might be having dinner with your friends, but you think about it.
Knowing what details are important and what details aren't important, I think you learn that over time.
HBS is a lot of work. I would be lying if I said I didn't do homework for many hours a night. And if folks don't want to put in the effort to read the cases and prepare the cases and come and discuss them, then this isn't a place for them.
I expect students to give their heart and soul to the case. Most importantly, I expect the students to put themselves in the shoes of the protagonist of the case and ask themselves seriously, what would I do? What would they do if they really had that situation in their lives?
We teach people in many ways the courage to act under uncertainty. The facts in a case are always limited. The amount of information you have at hand is by design quite compressed. You're working under great time pressure. We're asking people to learn how to take a stand.
So Z Corp, their startup, they make this product called the Z402, which is a three-dimensional printer.
Learning Team is a chance for the student to move from individual preparation to a small group and test their ideas for the first time.
Also, it gives you better, different material, better quality. I mean, yeah.
But there's no high-end market where the designer can actually produce his own prototypes.
Right, but we don't have a high-end product.
Many students are pretty convinced when they're done with their individual analysis, they've got the answer. They often find they sit down with their learning team and there are 4 other answers, equally compelling, but very, very different.
I mean, I don't think they have a year to kill training people, and these people are already trained to sell. You just have to teach them about the product.
Right, but they only need 6 this first year to meet their goals. Having the learning team is extremely valuable. It's instrumental in the way we get educated in this institution. Because the truth of the matter is, if you didn't have someone to give you some pushback, the material wouldn't sink in the way it does.
I think your numbers, if you bring it to the board, they will probably say go back and come back with another plan.
Learning Team is a great opportunity to take risks because you know these people very well. It's a very small, close-knit group, but also a pretty diverse group, so people have different perspectives.
And the best way is through interaction with people from all around the world.
The very focused learning about different cultures and different traditions actually comes in.
In reality, you could start off like building a sales force and then like using one of these channels because there's no risk anyway.
You often get a better sense as to, okay, what's the key thing we're really going to debate in class, and what are our different perspectives on it, so you can start to get that thought process going and really warm up before walking in for the opening call. I think Z Corp is one of those very classic HBS cases where the protagonist is here in the room.
I have Tom Clay here. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're coming in with a problem that they have faced in the past, and everyone comes in with a stance.
Okay, Reba, what was your number? What's the 2001 forecast?
It's a bit aggressive, about 115.
115.
15, yeah.
It's aggressive. It's not the record, but that's pretty high.
We're creating the market. We're also tapping into people who are using technologies that already exist. It's nerve-wracking, but at the same time, once you start describing what your rationale was, you become a lot more comfortable.
Nick, what's your number?
6 million.
With the same set of facts, students had to come to their own conclusion about the sales opportunity for Z Corp, and the range was very wide.
And that's not unique to the Z Corp case. That happens almost on a daily basis.
There's a pretty big difference of opinion working from the same set of facts. So we could keep going trying to figure out how you got to these various numbers, but actually encourage us to think about why there's a difference.
The reason we have such a big range in the forecast is because either we're thinking about this as, this is the pie of people who may buy.
That's what HBS is about. It's not about trying to prove that you're right every single time. It's by exposing you to different perspectives, other ways of looking at businesses.
It's my job to create an environment for the students where it's safe to take some risks, to offer some new ways of thinking about something, where it feels safe to have those ideas challenged. Where does that push you in terms of your channel choice?
Nobody really playing in a very big market, and you want to go with the CAD guys who sort of cover this entire space, know who the buyers are, know where the decision making is.
The direct gives you that control to be able to educate and really build those relationships and help, basically create a market for this product.
So I think the direct method works well because the salesperson will know the company very well. They'll know what they need.
In marketing, we learn you should always focus on what you're good at, your core competencies. And for me, that is the ability to make a
superior product, because if you can think of yourself, position yourself to be sell to Xerox one day, but unless you have something that is truly extraordinary, you're not going to be able to do that.
We're engineers. Keep doing what we're good at doing and let other people do the sales and marketing.
Exactly.
We've got no proven ability to do that. We're resource constrained. Paul?
I would completely disagree. I think this is the exact opportunity that they have to move forward, build into sales. They seem to have a lot of customer demand. I think that based on the projections, it's not that aggressive to assume that they can hit that 23 break even.
What makes you so positive that you're going to hit that, and what if you don't? It is a fixed cost.
Yeah, I actually used the same data for exactly the opposite conclusion, which is that you have one salesperson and you have 17 engineers, and you sold in 4 months 10 units with this product.
One guy sold 10 units in 4
And
months.
people really want to debate. They don't just want to, say their statement and get out, but you find that people are going back and forth about different points of view and really challenging each other to further defend their points.
I've never seen anything quite like our classroom. I've never seen anything with as much dynamism in it. I've never seen anything turn on a dime as fast as a case method classroom discussion can turn on the dime.
We just saw it unfold on the board. You saw 3 different sales strategies, and at the end, I think most people had either changed their opinion or were at least more open to a different sales strategy.
So we're having a little trouble making this decision. Maybe each of you can make the decision very clearly by yourself, but you end up collectively in very different places. Tom had trouble making the decision. Why is Tom having difficulty making this decision? Peter?
I think part of the problem for Tom right now is that he does sort of want to use a hybrid method.
My favorite classes are those where the debate is still raging 20 minutes after class, and we can't stop it.
I think that's the sign of a really good case discussion, is when people are just so excited and so interested in the conversation that it really stretches far outside of that classroom experience.
You will turn to the person next to you and you'll say, I totally disagree with what's on the board. And I think that's great.
These cases are real life. These cases are things you run into day by day. So you interact with it when you're at the drugstore. You interact with them when you're driving your car on your way home.
I truly think the learning doesn't stop, and it doesn't always revolve around cases. It happens in conversations with people, just discussing backgrounds and experiences.
At the end of the day, you come to business school because you want to manage people. If you want to just study ideas, departments of economics and things of that kind are fabulous alternatives. But if you want to lead people in common cause, you got to interact with people.
The world of business, the world of responsibility, the world of being entrusted with other people's lives is all about constant change. If the last 2 years have taught us anything at all, they have taught us that turbulence is the new normal. And leading through permanent crisis has a huge role now for leaders of all shapes and sizes.
I found a strong link and a keen similarity between the case method and the way the creative process works. Rather than, study textbooks and take tests, it's interactive, it's engaging, it's like you become the characters in the cases and you put yourself in the situation. So much like the creative process, it's more of a holistic approach to learning about a subject.
It walked me through the process of stocks trading, which before I came I had no idea what that was, but reading the case beforehand and then engaging with all of the students and the professor helped walk me through that process, and it pushed me, it stretched me, and it helped me reach areas that I wouldn't have done alone.
As an engineer, I've gotten a lot of technical instruction. Here's the equation, go home, apply it, we'll come back and talk about it tomorrow. But the case method kind of puts you on the spot. Here's the scenario as we know it, here's the details that this person had at the time they had to make the decision, what would you do?
We had a case on stock trading, and I had never done anything with that before, and I was a little nervous reading the case over the first time. But the learning teams were a great thing that we met with. A man in my learning team knew a lot about finance, so that really helped us. And then being in the case, just hearing, I didn't really speak that much during that case, but hearing other people and what they had to say, I learned something from that.
And I realized that a lot of the case method and a lot of the section breakdown that we have is designed to, have you engage really deeply with those classmates so that you can challenge yourself. Those kinds of skills will serve me in management roles, in roles where I need to deal with very different sets of commitments, and I'm really excited about starting.
I was pleasantly surprised actually in the first case we discussed.
It was about a trade negotiation. I read through it, and honestly, I think I covered everything. But in the end, I realized I have covered about a third of all the aspects of the problem.
Someone may have a completely different view than you did and may present an argument or idea that you've never thought of, and to now say, wow, that's something that I should have thought of, that's something that needs to be considered.
And that was when I realized that this was how I learned best. And I had never known that because I'd never experienced it before, but I knew in that moment that the case study method was the best way for me to fully engage in an idea.
It's written like a story with a cliffhanger, which is about as cool as your homework can get. They do read like chapters in a novel, and the very end of it says, what does Greg do now? And very often it's an uncomfortable question and not one you would want to have to answer if you were him.
I think learning from 90 of your peers that are in that classroom is a lot better than learning just from one teacher, and that's what I'm looking most forward to.
It's going to be a challenge. I'm not just jump in and say my opinion kind of person. It's going to take a lot of effort for me to speak up in class and to be the first person that's called on and present the case in front of everyone. That's going to be tough, but that's another reason why I think this is going to be so good for me, because it's going to push me and expand my boundaries and force me to adopt that style, which is going to be valuable in the business world. I'm sure of that.
So I hope that kind of gives you a sense of how case analyses are conducted. Let me highlight a few things that relates back to the video to make sure that it's not sidestepped. Number one, the idea with setting up case study analyses and having the discussion in the classroom rather than a monologue from the professor professing is really for you to be attuned and get familiar with speaking up, with the courage to express your opinion, to act, and to take risk. This is an academic environment, and you should take advantage of the situation to use it and to express your opinion. And hopefully, even if you're wrong or others might criticize it, gives you an opportunity to speak up as it is necessary to do so in a business environment. I like what they said about how running a business or being a leader in a corporation is different than, let's say, an economist or an analyst. You do need to talk to people. There's a lot of interaction, and certainly you can't do that by being silent and quiet. The second point that I want to highlight is the notion that cases by their nature, be it 2 pages, be it 5 pages, be it 10 pages, or even be it 200 pages, they are a truncation, they are a distillation of what goes on in the real world. So, but inherently, there's going to be elements of the situation that are not included in the case. You are provided with limited number of facts. You are provided with a compressed reality. And so one of my pet peeves, and I know it's an issue with my fellow colleagues as well, is when students come in and say, well, we didn't have enough information to do this, or we didn't have enough, the case did not provide enough information. You should assume that the case has enough information to get you to where you want to go. Now, if there are elements that you think is necessary for further discussion or for further analysis, you can make assumptions. As long as you highlight your assumptions, that's fair enough. But try to avoid putting a blame on the case writers and the designers, because especially when it comes to Ivy, Harvard Business Review, and other cases that are chosen for the purposes of our class, rarely, if ever, the cases are done by people that are less than intelligent. So give onus to them. The third part that I want to mention is in terms of interaction, be it in terms of groups, be it in terms of learning teams, be it in terms of your study partner. It's important to speak out loud and to talk out loud about the matters of the case, because oftentimes it's only through interaction and dialogue that we realize, holy cow, I did not catch this apart correctly, or I probably highlighted and prioritized a matter that is of less of a concern. And like one of the students was saying, only a third of the matters that were important was highlighted by him. Discussion, dialogue, and team interactions also allow you to allow the factors to sink in, and so and by default, when you talk, it helps with critical thinking of recognizing the important aspects of the case. In my classes, we try to debate and dialogue about the case as much as possible. My favorite, just like what the professor was saying, is my favorite is where the discussion about the case is heated enough that the dialogue goes on after the class is over. And so do not feel bashful about expressing your opinion, and as long as you have sound logic behind it, to carry on with the debate. So the last thing I want to mention about the video from Harvard is, you notice the size of their classes, right? We think of some of the Ivy League schools as having an advantage on us. I like to think that we have an advantage on them when it comes to our business school here at Rutgers, because generally speaking, my classes have never been the size that this gentleman, the professor, is teaching, and so that also allows you to speak up as much as possible, be it face-to-face or be it online or be it hybrid. The possibilities for you to speak up in the classroom is quite high in our plans. But let me highlight a couple of other things that might be of help to you in this regard. These are posted into your course material. There's a guide to case analysis handout that discusses why we do cases and the case method and how that's different from other methods of teaching. And this is quite a number of pages. I'm not going to go through all of them, all the details, but I just want to make sure that you recognize the significance and the detail that this provides. The case method of instruction, what your responsibilities are is in terms of active participation, interactions, critical evaluation, and effective communication. The objectives and the purpose of the case is provided, as well as the expectations and how to prepare for them. And then it goes on to explaining further detail about the approach, which talks about situational audit, figuring out what's going on around that area, problem, decision, and statement, which I'll explain these in a little bit in a separate slide, identifying alternatives, critical issues, and onto the analysis. Okay. The other part that I think is important, this also is a handout that's provided on your course platform. In terms of preparation, preparing for it means to really highlight the central issue, choosing relevant areas, and 3 and 4, 5 after that, which I'll let you read. But participation, this single page is a good summary of what is expected of you in terms of participation and preparation. So do make sure to read through these. And then next, I wanted to share another video that kind of highlights good practices from students in terms of what to expect for case analyses. So let's take a look at what this video has to say.
How to prepare a business case study, and how not to. Here's a story of two college roommates, Fred and Ted. They sat side by side in the same business class, and it was one that used a lot of business cases to teach the material. The time came for the students to prepare for their first case discussion. The prof told them, in his most austere professor's voice, "You need to make case preparation a priority. The case is 10 pages long, and you should take about 2 hours to read it, analyze it, and come up with some solutions. Remember, I'll be calling on you, even if you don't have your hand in the air. So be ready." Fred took the professor's words to heart. But Ted knew the professor was bluffing. Nobody cold calls students these days, he told Fred. And even if he does, there are like 25 of us in the class, so there's about a 1% chance he's going to call on me. Fred told Ted he might want to retake his statistics class, and he went back to prepping the case. Fred started by reading the case question. the question they'd be discussing in the class, because he thought that that would at least help him identify what was relevant in the case. He then carefully read the case, trying to put himself in the role of the protagonist. If I stand in her shoes, he thought, then my solutions will probably be a little more realistic. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, Ted diligently played his video games. He knew he had plenty of time tomorrow before the business class to do homework. Fred's next step was to spend some time looking over the exhibits in the back of the case. Budget data, some info on the competition in the industry, a few cost projections. He used that information to calculate what it would take for the protagonist in the case to break even with her new product. The prospects didn't seem promising. "Dude, I got the high score," shouted Ted. "Come on, Fred, get a life and grab a controller." Fred pressed on, though. He wondered if maybe he missed something in the case. He went back through and considered another option, a more innovative one that might work better. Still, his revenue projections seemed way too optimistic. The protagonist needs to back off this new product, Fred concluded. He jotted down a few more notes and went to sleep, the sound of aliens biting the dust still in the background. The next morning, Fred met Cindy and Mindy at the cafeteria. They were in the business class too, so the three of them discussed the case. The girls had come up with an alternative that Fred hadn't considered, something that might actually work for this company. Fred added some of his financial analysis skills to their idea and tweaked their recommendation to make it more viable. Then the three of them went off to class. Along the way, they saw Ted, reading the case for the first time as he walked across campus. "I got this," Ted told them. "She should launch the product as soon as possible. It'll make millions." Fred smiled politely. Cindy rolled her eyes. Mindy thought, "You're going to get it all right." Sure enough, as Ted predicted, the professor first called on someone other than Ted to respond to the case. Then he cold called a second student. And then, Ted. "How do you see it, Theodore?" Ted stammered through a response, and then the professor pounced. "Is she going to make money if she does that? How much? Did you factor in the fixed cost of production? What about the fact that the competition's already established in that market?" Ted was stumped each time. In the end, all he could manage was, "That's a good question." "Thanks for the feedback," his teacher snickered. "Fred, can you give us some insight here?" Fred's answer was a home run in the upper deck. He laid out a couple different scenarios with some numbers to back them up, giving Cindy and Mindy credit where it was due. But suddenly another student interrupted. "That'll never work," and he went on to make his argument. He and Fred went back and forth for about 5 minutes debating the merits of their ideas. In the end, the professor asked the class to vote, and about half of them agreed with Fred. He was exhilarated by the exchange, but ultimately disappointed by the vote. Next time, thought Fred, I'm not only going to come up with a business strategy, I'm going to come up with a persuasion strategy to sell my ideas. As Fred and Ted walked out of class together, the professor gave Fred a thumbs up. A few hours later, Fred was back at it, prepping the next case, this time with Cindy and Mindy. So what's the moral of the story? There are actually lots of them. Here are 7 tips to prepare for a case discussion. First, start by reading the case question to help you sift the information. The case question is essentially a filter to separate what's relevant from what's not. Next, invest a lot of time reading the case carefully. Ideally, make it undistracted time. This is not like reading a novel. You need to focus and concentrate. The third tip is this. As you read, put yourself in the protagonist's shoes. The more you can do this, the more realistic your solutions are likely to be. Tip 4. Closely consider the exhibits at the end of the case, and if necessary, use those data to make better decisions. Don't ignore them. Crunch the numbers. Do the quantitative analysis to inform and support your recommendations. Also, don't be satisfied with your initial conclusions. Critique them, thinking through your assumptions and whether there may be an even better way. Tip 6 is this, and don't miss this one. Consider meeting with a few other students before class to discuss and sharpen your recommendations. For many students, this is where the real learning happens. Plus, it gives you a chance to talk through your ideas in a small group enabling you to participate more confidently in class. And lastly, and as part of your case preparation, develop a persuasion strategy. Think through not only a great answer to the case question, but how you're going to convince others that you're right. You see, it's not enough to be the smartest person in the room or to have the best idea. You have to sell it too. And here's one bonus tip. Stay mindful of how much this is going to help you. Yeah, case study is a lot of work if you do it right, but it will vastly improve your ability to solve problems and to make wise decisions and to confidently, persuasively present your ideas. If you're serious about learning and about developing into an outstanding professional, invest the time to prepare cases well. You'll see a terrific return on that investment.
Good. I think this video clip kind of captures it all. Persuasiveness and your ability to sell the ideas are just as important as knowing the case. Let's talk about some of the expectations that we have in terms of mine and my colleagues here at Rutgers Business School. This is essentially a PDF that is provided to you as well in your course platform. Be it online, face-to-face, group, or individual, much of this applies when you're doing cases for me in my classes. In terms of the analysis and write-up, the format that's expected is to have a very, very short introduction, or background or a background on the case. Remember, we all know about the case. We know what's going on. This is just to touch base, to synchronize, to make sure that how you're thinking of it is the same as everybody else. But it doesn't have to be very long. There's no value add in writing a summary of the case. Then we get into the synopsis. Your body of report should be discussing the main issue and any side issues and alternatives that are identified. You go on to recommendations. Notice they're the plural. There always should be several recommendations, as if you're presenting this to a CEO or a decision maker. In many occasions, you can actually consider yourself to be a consultant hired to be looking at the situation. And therefore it's highly likely that they're going to have expectations of several scenarios, several solutions to consider, and why your choices are there, immediate and long-term benefits of each of the solutions. And then you want to conclude with further thoughts on the issue. Can we generalize this to other situations? What are the matters beyond this immediate recommendations? Now, as we mentioned earlier, and as you will be reading through the PDF files, the content and message should be based on the 5 steps that I highlighted. Central issue identification. The second video talks about the case question. Well, frankly, we're going to go beyond that here at Rutgers. Oftentimes, I don't even give you a question for the case. You should be able to identify the key element of the case just by looking at the case, the title, and the topic and the contents. Then you go on to choose the relevant area for deliberation. What are some of the key areas? How to analyze each one. Consider their relative importance. Look at possibilities within and outside the box, so to speak. Just like when Ted went back and reconsidered some of his thoughts, what else can you throw in there that would be even of a better solution? And then you critique what you have done, draw final conclusions, and make recommendations. This is in terms of your cognitive process, but especially during stage 4 and 5, it becomes quite important to consider talking to other students, even if you're doing this on an individual basis. It really helps your explanation in class, your postings in a discussion thread, or your general write-up. The case write-up structure is important. Notice I don't say format, I say structure. You want to lead the reader through what you're thinking, but whether or not you're using 12 font or 11 font is not as critical. Whether you're using footnotes that are MLA I don't really care about that much. My colleagues might. You might want to check with the instructors. But I would like for you to think critically and think about options and alternatives that are viable. If there are questions, at the end of the case, you can use techniques, methods, and strategies that we have learned in the class. There may not be questions at the end, but you can still apply the techniques and methods. The number 3 is very important. I highlight this because it is often a forgotten tool. And very good to excellent students apply that. There's no reason to expect that the case has everything that you need. There's no reason that the case and your textbook have all the information for your situation. Guys, this is business school. Business school is about solution, and this is why our classes are not physics or mathematics where specific equations solve the problem. So feel free to go to the outside. Feel free to ask friends, colleagues that are in the industry. Read the magazines. Look up on the internet to see if if this is a supplier selection matter. What has been written about supplier selection? What are some cases that go on? So as the video said, case study analyses do require quite a bit of work, but they can also be very exciting, and so don't feel like you can cut corners because it clearly shows in the outcome and the results. Here I note the analysis should be written as if you're a consultant to the company. If you can't pretend to be a consultant, or the case just doesn't permit for that, imagine yourself as the owner or someone that is hired as an employee to consider solutions to it. X to Y pages, and I highlight those in class depending on the case. If there are many cases, if you're doing it on an individual basis, to groups, to cases that have presentations, the length of the analysis can be shorter or longer, around 3 to 5 pages. And I say this again because oftentimes students that are supposed to be listening to this video that don't ask me about it. So please listen to this very carefully. If you're doing cases on an individual basis, 3 to 5 pages. If you're doing it on a group basis, 10 to 12 pages is the expectation in general speaking. This is, of course, if if I've mentioned something about a particular case, then there would be an override, but that's generally the rule of thumb. Double space, 12 font, margins 5, but these are again very, very soft requests. What is more important is what's the content, right? References are important. You do want to make sure that you use your outside resources and highlight those in the case. Cover page is okay if most of the cases are submitted online, so this is not as critical. And of course, the last one doesn't really pertain to expectations in my new version of the course. Our groups generally 3 to 4 pages, and generally everybody gets the same grade unless there's significant issues related to participation. All right, and so just to kind of summarize what the expectations are, your case report should be should look like the red, based on the blue to the right. The format expectations are introduction, body, recommendations, and conclusion. Very, very short background. Again, any more than a half a page is too much. And main issues, side issues for the body, and onwards to the recommendations. The content should be based on a central issue, relevant issues that need to be explored, other possibilities, and an end critique. Finally, I'm going to share generally how myself and the teaching assistant for the course is going to look at the cases. We're just going to go through item 4, and you are welcome to take a look at how a bad case is written, but item 4 is a well thought out and supports the solution to the challenge of the cases, reflects application of critical thinking, which means prioritizing the key aspects of the case. It has a clear goal, right? You have something to say and you want to say it. You use a variety of different sources, and it's accurate. So if the volume is not growing and it's a diminishing business, but you're talking about a growth in the business, certainly that's not accurate. And no spelling, no grammatical issues, punctuation important, just because that shows that you're a professional. Let's see. Good vocabulary and word choice is important. And the fact that information is clearly focused on the organization in a thoughtful manner, right? You're not spreading and jumping around talking about unessential and unimportant factors. Now, one last item relates to case excellence and scoring. You do what I mentioned in area 4 in the last slide, yet your score is 88%. Of the total available, or 87%, or 89%. You say, gosh, Prof, I did everything that you told me to do, and I'm still scoring imperfectly. The answer to that is excellence is not just meeting the requirements, but rather exceeding expectations. So item 4 up above is just simply meeting expectations. For you to be able to hit it out of the ballpark, you need to come up with ways that for me, for the grader, or whoever else that's looking at the case to say, aha, these guys have something interesting to say beyond what is just getting the job done. So again, excellence. The nature of excellence, the word excellence means excel, to move beyond and above and beyond expectations. So keep that in mind. In most cases, I think there tends to be an expectation from students to score perfectly, even if they are doing less than excellent work. So, and that's something that I highlight with the TAs quite often. We look very, very carefully at ways in which you've been creative, innovative, looking at different solutions, looking at alternatives, looking at sources from the outside, examples that can provide something of a benefit beyond what the case requires. So, hope this short video has been able to help you in getting prepared for case analysis in terms of discussion in class, online, and also in terms of writing up your reports, be it individually or in group. So good luck to you.